What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We are here with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice for DraftKings and FanDuel. This time for the single game showdown slate on Monday Night Football here in Week 8. It's the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Washington Commanders. In this video, we will talk about the injuries that impact tonight's slate from a betting and DFS perspective. We will give you core plays and low risk lineup construction tips, and then strategies and tips to help you win the biggest prizes in the tournaments that DraftKings and FanDuel have to offer. Welcome, I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, single game $1 million winner. And big spread tonight with the Chiefs hosting the Commanders. Let's start with the visiting Commanders and discuss their injury situation. Quarterback Jaden Daniels, he will be out tonight after sustaining that hamstring injury versus the Cowboys last week. Marcus Mariota will draw the start. And Mariota, a pretty capable backup, as we've seen in his limited action this year, averaging at least 20 yards rushing per game when he's been in the game. Not going to have a ton of passing volume. That should be elevated tonight if the projected spread holds true of Kansas City minus 11. But a talented dude, veteran who can get the job done. So he can get the ball to his playmakers. And more importantly, we can use him in DFS. Now, at the wide receiver position for the Commanders, they're actually returning their top two guys, Deebo Samuel and Terry McLaurin. Both missed last week. McLaurin has missed a few games. They will both return tonight. And after Washington has been running out insurance agents at receiver for the past couple of weeks, they'll have a full complement of guys in the receiver room tonight. It would be nice to see Jaden Daniels with those guys. Either way, we get Deebo and Terry McLaurin at full health. Neither one has an injury designation, so they are fully healthy and fully good to go. On the defensive side of the ball, the Commanders will be without their edge rusher Doris Armstrong. He is on injured reserve, and they'll likely be without their defensive tackle Daron Payne. Now, Daron Payne didn't practice the last few days, has a toe injury, and is extremely questionable to play. They're going to work him out today. Now, if he can't go, they will definitely elevate a defensive tackle from their practice squad. So by 4 p.m. Eastern, we'll know if Daron Payne is in or out. And normally this would be a pretty big boost to the Kansas City offense, but more on that here in a second. And finally, their kicker, Matt Gay, is officially questionable, dealing with some sort of back injury. He did travel to Kansas City with the team. They're going to make a decision on him today. Now, the kicker here, no pun intended, is they don't have another kicker on the active roster or on the practice squad. So if they're going to have a different kicker tonight, if Gay cannot go, they have to sign him by 4 p.m. And if that's the case, that kicker almost assuredly will not be in the DraftKings or FanDuel player pool. I can't imagine them adding a guy that late. So if Matt Gay cannot play today, and we'll find out again probably by 4 p.m., then we will just be without a kicker option for Washington in DFS. So just keep that in mind and monitor the practice squad elevations and active roster signings later this afternoon. Now, I mentioned the Daron Payne likely absence and why it should impact the Chiefs' offense in a positive way. But the Chiefs will actually be without their right guard, Trey Smith. He is doubtful. So that kind of offsets the loss of Daron Payne. Now, remember, Washington is still missing one of their edge rushers in Doris Armstrong. So still a slight boost to Kansas City's offense. There shouldn't be a ton of pressure that they're going to have to deal with, which is not a great sign if you're facing Patrick Mahomes. All right, let's move on to low-risk contests in DFS, DraftKings and FanDuel, where you just have to beat half the field to double your money, 50-50s, double-ups, head-to-heads. And we try to lock up all the scoring, but locking up all the scoring in this game is a little bit tricky because we have a three-headed backfield in Kansas City with Isaiah Pacheco, with Rashard Smith, who's coming on pretty strongly here in the last couple of weeks. We've talked about him on these showdown videos here for the last few weeks. And Kareem Hunt at $3,000 on DraftKings. All three of these guys are getting snaps. Now, Pacheco has started to take over a little bit. And in fact, 2 weeks ago, he played the most snaps he's played in the game in terms of percentage-wise since week 1 before his leg injury last year. So they're starting to trust him more. And I believe it was a broadcast last week or the week before where they said they want to get him more involved and start to have him be the true lead back. And their actions have followed with Pacheco. So expect Pacheco to be a lead guy here. Now, Rashard Smith starting to get more work, more design touches. Remember, former college receiver. And we just have to be careful with last week. Last week, the Chiefs basically immediately blew out the Raiders. Didn't really play their guys in the second half. Rashard Smith got 14 carries. Almost all of these were in the second half. So just be very careful if you're looking at last week's snaps and routes run and trying to extrapolate that for tonight's game. And I guess it could be the same if they blow out the Commanders. I don't think it's as likely as the Raiders showing up and running the fewest offensive plays since like 2011. So Either way, Brashard Smith is going to get some options. And then Kareem Hunt, not to be forgotten, while he's playing less snaps, he's still getting some short down yardage work, and he's still getting third down work. So decent floor for his price tag at $3,000. And remember, didn't play much last week against the Raiders, banged up a little bit, and didn't really play in the second half in that blowout. But other than that, we can almost bank on 4+ points from Kareem Hunt, which is kind of a nice floor depending on the contest that you're playing in. And on the Washington side, at the running back room, we have the dichotomy of JCM, Bill, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, only playing on early downs essentially. We have Jeremy McNichols only playing in hurry up and third down snaps. And you would have to think that in a game where this is an 11-point spread, we likely see more of McNichols in the second half or in 2-minute situations compared to Krosky-Merritt. Now, if Krosky-Merritt can get on the board early, or if this game can be closer than the spread indicates, then he's more viable. Either way, in low-risk contests, we're looking at what's the most likely outcome. And the most likely, the median outcome is Kansas City controlling this game, which means less opportunities for Krosky-Merritt. So someone that we don't have to jam into our low-risk lineups. All this said, who do we want to get into our lineups then for low risk? These are the core plays for lineups of all contest types, but specifically for low risk. So we want Patrick Mahomes at the captain. He will be the most popular captain. Next, we want Rashee Rice. If we're not going to play Bill Krosky-Merritt or another guy here, then we want to get up to another high floor, high ceiling guy. And Rashee Rice, again, last week made his 2025 debut after his 6-game suspension. 10 targets on like 30 or 40 snaps. Just an insane number of targets, 4 red zone opportunities, scored 2 touchdowns. And whether or not his limited snap share last week was as a result of them trying to ease him back in, coming off suspension, or them just immediately freight training Las Vegas, either way, we should expect to see his workload ramp up and get near that 100% snap rate here over the next couple of weeks, which means as the number one option in this offense that is constantly improving, Rashee Rice is a great high floor, high ceiling option. He'll be extremely popular in all contest types. Let's get him in. Then we want Marcus Mariota, quarterback for the Commanders. That leaves us $4,900 left per player. And there's a couple ways we can go here. We can play Pacheco as an 11-point favorite and getting more opportunities, $3,850 left per player. That's possible. We could play Jeremy McNichols, the third down running back. We could play Kareem Hunt. If we play Hunt, that allows us to get up to the Chiefs defense, which is a great idea as an 11-point home favorite. If you wanted to go more balanced, you could go Bucker, Chiefs, 5,300. That doesn't leave you much. If Matt Gay plays, certainly you could play him. But I do like the idea of playing Pacheco first, so getting Pacheco in there and then figuring out the rest. Also, just another way, if you didn't want to play Kareem Hunt, you could drop down to Noah Gray at 2,000, 5,700 left per player. We could play Harrison Bucker here. We could play Zach Ertz. So a couple options here. But I think Mahomes, Rice, and Mariota are the 3 guys you definitely want to get into your DraftKings low-risk lineups. Now, on FanDuel, it is a bit different. So let's go over to FanDuel. And again, we want to play Patrick Mahomes at MVP here. We're going to expect him to be 50% plus in most contests, probably 75 to 90% in low risk or small field contests at MVP. So let's put him in there at MVP. And we'll put Mahomes. Now, Rashee Rice is the most expensive player on this slate. And with the half-point PPR scoring, not nearly as valuable in low-risk contests. So we don't have to force him in here. In fact, it's pretty tough to get him in. Next, we'll play the other quarterback, Marcus Mariota. Now, Pacheco, a little more valuable here at $8,200. That leaves $6,600 left per player, and it's kind of the same thing. We can go similar ways. We expect the third down running back in Jeremy McNichols to be relatively popular over here at $2,400. We can fit him in, and that leaves $8,750 left per player. If we played Rice, just to see what it looks like, $4,300. None of these guys are super appealing, all wide receiver 3, 4, 5 types, so probably can't do that. But if we go a mid-range option like, let's say, Chiefs defense, that leaves $11,100. We could play Debo. We could play Xavier Worthy. And if we took out Jeremy McNichols and just went 3 mid-range options, we could go Kansas City Chiefs, Harrison Bucker, Matt Gay if he plays, or Zach Ertz. Probably the best option for FanDuel low-risk contests. All right, let's clear this. Let's go back to DraftKings, and let's talk about high-risk contests. And we're going to do this section a little bit differently today, so stick around and let's see how we can handle high-risk contests, leagues, GPP, satellites, where we have to beat a lot of people to win a lot of money. So, the field, unsurprisingly, is going to build extremely Kansas City heavy. Values on the Kansas City side, they're 11-point favorites. Expect a ton of 5-1 Kansas City lineups, 4-2 Kansas City lineups, 3-3 Kansas City lineups with a Chiefs player at the captain. And I'm not saying you should build against that. It's certainly fine and probably the right way to build for this type of slate. If you're building Washington heavy, 4 commanders or 3 commanders with the commander's captain, you don't have to do too much else to be different in your high risk contest. Now, if you're playing large field GPPs, yes, you still want to mix in low owned players and leave salary. But if you're playing the Kansas City angle, which I think is still the best angle to play, a lot of my early builds are Kansas City heavy. You want to mix in at least one, but probably 2 low-owned players. But I think if you think about an 11-point spread, if that holds, kind of similar to how low total games tend to leave more salary on the table for winning lineups and optimal lineups, blowout games also have that similar phenomenon where one player from the opposing team or 2 players end up optimal. A couple cheaper players outscore higher scoring players. Defenses or kickers outscore positional players. And we end up seeing more salary left on the table in blowout games. So I think that's a great way to get different tonight in Kansas City heavy builds, leaving salary on the table. So instead of running through all the players like we've talked about in previous videos, I'm going to build some example lineups using our Occupy model. Hand building, if you don't have access to our lineup builder, but you only have the content only membership and you just have the model, I'll show you how you can do this and build some lineups. So let's think we're building a small field lineup and maybe we're entering a large field single entry, which again we advise against. You guys are going to play it regardless. So if you're building single entry, this is how I would approach it with our lineup, with our Occupy model. So let's pull up the Occupy model, and again, it ranks every player FanDuel and DraftKings. We're in the single game tab right now. We see all the projected ownership. And right now it is sorted by DraftKings OF Index. That is our proprietary metric for a player's likely expected value and ceiling outcome. So we see Rashee Rice is the #1 player in the model today. Rashee Rice is followed by Deebo Samuel, interesting, and then Patrick Mahomes. So what I would do next, let's just say we want to go with the #1 player in the model, Rashee Rice. We see that his projected captain ownership is 25%. So the second highest projected owned captain. So that alone tells us that we're going to have to get somewhat different here if we're going to play a really popular captain. So let's go to DraftKings. Let's slot in Rashee Rice in the captain spot. Now, knowing our showdown guide and general showdown strategy, we want to pair him with his quarterback and Patrick Mahomes, especially with someone who ranks highly and has such a high floor and ceiling like Mahomes. If Rashee Rice gets there, Patrick Mahomes likely does as well. Let's go back to the model. And Deebo's interesting next, right? 28% on DraftKings, not qualifying as low owned, but low owned enough. A good differentiator. Not many people are going to play Deebo, especially in this lineup. Let's go to DraftKings. We'll play Deebo next. And again, we're playing Deebo. We likely can't pair him with his quarterback, plus Deebo can get there without Mariota anyways, and they're in the same price tier. So if we tried to do this, it wouldn't leave a lot of salary left over. But if we just play Deebo, we're looking at 5,200 left per player. That's a pretty good way to build. Next, let's go back to the model. So what I'm thinking next, all right, 5,200. We need a cheaper player and we need a lower owned player because we have a popular captain, the most popular player in Patrick Mahomes, and we have a relatively popular, not super low owned, but not incredibly popular third option here in Deebo Samuel. So let's go back to the model. And again, we're sorted by DraftKings OF Index. This takes salary into account for football. So let's go down. Let's see if we can find a cheaper or lower owned option. And we scroll down and we see Hollywood Brown, Marquise Brown, at 11% on DraftKings. That qualifies as low owned. Now, we don't want to pair too many pass catchers with a teammate, receiver, captain, but one other one is fine, especially if they're of the lower price or the cheaper variety. So we played Hollywood Brown. That's one option. That leaves 5,100 left per player. But as I was looking earlier, we could just drop down one more spot and play Juju Smith-Schuster. Now he's 15%. He's 2,400 on DraftKings, and he's even cheaper, which is anytime I have a receiver captain, if I'm going to play another teammate with him, I would prefer the cheaper option because there's less he has to do. And if the second player goes off, in addition to Rashee Rice, there's a good chance that Mahomes ends up as the optimal captain or the winning captain, and that's not what we want if we're playing Rashee Rice at captain. So let's go with the cheaper option, Juju Smith-Schuster. He has to do less, which means Mahomes is less likely to be the optimal captain. So let's swap out Hollywood Brown. Let's go to Juju. Now, again, Juju 15%, smaller contest might be a little more popular to get there. So 6,600 left per player. We can go a couple different ways here. We can play, if we tried Mariota, at least 4,000. We could play Brashard Smith. That leaves the full salary. Not something we want to do with a popular captain and a popular build type. What I think is next interesting, if we play the Chiefs defense, 4,400, and we go back to the model, Chiefs defense, middle of the pack, 18%, hovering around that low on mark. But now we can get some extra correlation and leave salary on the table by slotting in Isaiah Pacheco. And that will leave $1,800 left on the table. May seem like a lot, but Chiefs defense, $1,800 more. Can they outscore someone 6,200 or more or less? And that really is Bucker, Hollywood Brown, Zach Ertz. Basically it. Yes, they can easily outscore them in this type of game script. And Pacheco, if we play him at 7K, can he outscore someone $1,800 or higher? That's McLaurin, Kelsey, JCM. Yes, absolutely in this type of game script. So this type of lineup, using the model and using what we know we need to get different and using correlation, we have a game where Kansas City blows out Washington. It is a 5-1 stack in Kansas City's favor, but it has a couple low-owned options and it leaves salary on the table. So it's a really good option. Let's build a different one to see how that would look. Let's go back to the model. And let's say we want to go with the low-owned captain angle. Debo, 5% projected captain ownership, number 2 in our model. We're trusting the model on this one, and we're making multiple lineups. Let's slide in a Debo captain and see how we can build that. Now, the fact that we're using a Washington captain and a 5% captain means we can use a little bit less. It's a sliding scale of how much uniqueness we need. Low-owned players, leaving salary on the table, constructions. All this is a sliding scale depending on how many players in your contest and what you're doing with your lineup. So let's play Debo. Now, if Debo's the optimal captain, his quarterback is more than likely going to be in there. So let's play Marcus Mariota. Next, we'll go Mahomes. We're going to play him in most of our lineups, given his floor and ceiling. But with 5,400 left per player, Mahomes, we're probably not going to play Rashee Rice. We're going to hope that he has a down game or just doesn't score enough or he gets squeezed out. So Mahomes, we can pair him with, let's go back to the model. Right? Remember, the model likes Xavier Worthy. It likes Hollywood Brown. It likes a lot of the Kansas City receivers. We'll go with Xavier Worthy and just see how this looks because we have Mahomes and we want to pair him with at least one pass catcher. $38.50 left per player. So now we need some cheaper options. We go down. We could play Juju again. That's certainly an option. The model doesn't like many cheaper options today, which is kind of rare. We could play Kareem Hunt at 3,000. Let's see how that looks, by the way. And maybe Kareem Hunt vultures a touchdown. That lowers Mahomes' ceiling, helps him not be the optimal captain in this particular lineup. Let's play Kareem Hunt and see what that looks like. 3K. 4,700 left per player. We could play Chiefs defense. Defense against opposing wide receiver. It hits more than you think, especially if you use most of the salary. So something like this, that's possible. And we have some low-owned options in Hunt, Chiefs defense, Debo Samuel. Certainly an option. But other than that, we don't really like what else here. So let's drop from Xavier Worthy to Hollywood Brown and just see. Again, we're playing around here as we're hand building. Kareem Hunt still 7,900. We're not going to play this. 5,450. Let's play Harrison Butker. 5,900. We could play Zach Ertz. This is interesting, right? So we have Mahomes with a pass catcher. We have Mariota with 2 pass catchers, a mid-range option and a high-range option, and then the favorite kicker. Now let's just think about uniqueness for a second. Is this unique enough? Will it be duped heavily? Does it make sense? Debo, 5% captain. Let's look at the ownership of these other guys. Well, one, we have Hollywood Brown at 11%. 5% captain, 11% flex play. That should basically be enough, right? Maybe this is duped a little more than we want in the largest GPP on DraftKings or FanDuel. Possible. But anything smaller than that, this will be enough to get different. So, and you can run this same exercise over on FanDuel. And even if you don't have access to our occupied model, again, we recommend it. It's less than $7 per week, depending on the plan that you choose. You get access to the model and build your lineups this way. And if you don't have access to the lineup builder, which can do all this automatically for you, you don't have to hand build anything. You can do all this stuff automatically. Either way, if you use projections or you're looking at some sort of content out there for free to give you a sense of who's going to be high owned and who's going to be low owned, this is the type of thought process you can go through to build your lineups for showdown slates. Now, you'll see on the screen here, it'll pop up an in-depth video how I build NFL showdown lineups. Make sure you watch that after this video, and it'll play automatically, by the way. Or if you want to click it, go ahead and click it. I watch it every couple of weeks as a refresher because I always miss things, and we all have busy lives, so it's easy to get sidetracked and forget a couple of things. So we rewatch that video every couple of weeks to get refreshed. Any questions you have, drop a comment below, and I will certainly answer it before the slate begins tonight at 8:15 p.m. Eastern. Also, drop some water emojis. I haven't seen the water emojis last couple of videos. Drop some water emojis in the comments. So for Occupy and Brian, thanks for listening. Good luck and enjoy tonight's Kansas City and Washington Showdown slate.